Oh, cool. Alright, I'll watch that when I get back. Talk to you later. Okay. Bye. Dad says hi to Chris and Roland.
Okay.
Christy, say hi to everybody.
I wanted you to say hi for me. I kept talking, yeah.
Sorry, Daddy. Sorry, babe. He's talking a mile a minute. He's yakety yak at me because he usually calls me like 4 times a day. So he's trying to get 4 conversations into one.
In 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I hear a waterfall over here.
Yeah, you can.
Let's go check it out.
I'm good. Are you okay?
Sure, I share. Oh, there's one way up there because I can see it laying. Where those are, straight up from it, I can see he's laying on his side.
Yeah, it might be in labor. Because they said it's time now.
Something?
No.
I'm still trying
It's quite a bit higher than the other one.
Yeah.
Just before you get to the clouds. They got the one on the right up the top looks like ice, but down to the left.
Oh, yeah. Here, I'm not going to try with the glass. Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's snow. I think it's...
Oh,
now I see it.
Oh yeah, look at them. Yeah, they're moving.
Down here.
No, that's on
This knob right here, standing. There's a boat and, doesn't heat up the water. There's a green patch. A little bit right there. We're coming up onto him
Where
right
that
there.
crevice is, kind of?
No, over this way. It's not very far off the water. You go down to the water and then go up and there's like a green patch. And he's standing.
Huh.
More, just a tiny, just straight across and then just a tiny bit left. Low by the water.
Straight across? Y'all seeing them? No?
The seagull right flying.
What I saw up there was ice.
But down by the water.
I see where you're
That round thing, he's got a patch of green.
Oh yeah, yeah, I see him. Yeah, thank you. That's a big one.
Yeah, he is pretty big.
Want to see him, babe?
Moving? Sweet.
If you see this, those 3 little dots, 4 little dots, are those,
I lost him.
12 o'clock from us.
Ketchikan, Alaska, May 25, 2017. Waiting to get off the ship. Ketchikan, the salmon capital of the world. Welcome to Alaska's first city. That's what the sign says.
One more thing before I go downstairs, I need to take some things. You have this catalog here. This is a retail catalog. If you find something interesting, seems like there's law in Alaska that you have to have a gift store 100 feet away from you. So that's me. I am your gift store. I have all kinds of really interesting things that are very unique to rail only. You won't find them anything else. But since we are in the rail, I have some interesting.
Can you hear me now? Public speaking, always the most sobering part of the day. My name is Greg. I'll be your onboard manager. Just a quick heads up as you make your way about the concept.
Your hand, always make sure you hold on to something else. Usually preferable the back of the chair if you were downstairs in the dining room on the tabletop. Or, of course, if you really like to get know your neighbor, you can hang on to your neighbor's shoulder, right? Or not. Okay, another thing that is very, very important for you to remember, you see this little step right here that you stepped on when you got on your seat is about 4 inches high. A lot of the people forget, and sometimes you end up on your neighbor's shoulders or lap. It's a good way to get to know your neighbor, but you never know. that is one. So restrooms are downstairs. There's the stairs right there. So take the stairs and you'll find them at the bottom of the stairs. There are 2 restrooms. One thing that you have to remember for the restrooms, there are actually 3 rules. First rule, close the door. Second rule, close the door. And third rule,
Close the door.
no, wash your hands. I did. So also just make sure that you, when you get to the restroom, we do have the sink. If you put your purses in the sink, it's going.
Travel safe and sound.
About as fast as we go.
There's some pictures.
While they're resting, I'm preparing meals, I'm massaging, I'm changing booties, I'm fixing my sled, I'm refreshing my sled bag, I'm preparing food for myself. Mushers usually get, if I'm rested for about, or if I'm at a check point for about 6 hours, I might get about 2 hours of sleep in that 6 hours. And we run around the clock. So about 6 hours running, about 6 hours resting. Yeah.
So how does a musher prepare for the race?
Yeah, so how does a musher prepare for the race? I go out on training runs. So everything I'm going to do in a race, we've already done on a training run. Prepares the dogs, prepares me. There are some mushers that go to the gym or like lift weights or go running, that sort of a thing. Those mushers have a whole fleet of people doing all of the grunt work at the kennel. At Trailbreaker Kennel, I'm out there at 40 below chopping meat or wood or making fires or unloading dog food or hauling buckets of poop and feeding all of the dogs and all of that. That's what gets me ready for it. And training the dogs, going on every single training run with them. Yeah, good question. Does that give me the advantage? in the morning, and the first thing I do, I hear Dash, one of my dogs, get out of his doghouse, and stretches and makes his noise. And I go out and I hear Mez, one of my dogs, Ivory, who is on shore today. I have 2 dogs that have thyroid disorder. First thing I do in the morning is go out and take care of them. The early Athabascans were hunters, gatherers, and had to follow herds of game in order to survive. This meant roaming the Arctic, always on the move. Caribou and moose were the primary animals they ate. The reindeer that you see here are domestic relatives to caribou. Caribou travel in herds and often along the same migratory paths from one year to the next. Athabascans placed spears and fences along these paths in order to slow the herd down and funnel to an area where the individual caribou could be more easily killed. The Athabascans also had an advantage over the large animals in the winter by using snowshoes. Snowshoes allowed a group of Athabascan men to outmaneuver solitary moose or caribou in deep snow conditions. These snowshoes were made from 2 pieces of bent birch tied together with rawhide, and a strip of moose hide for the binding. These large animals provided the Athabascans with nearly everything they need to survive: the meat, the bones, and even the liquids we used. Nothing was wasted. The caribou hide was especially valuable to the Athabascans because of its warmth. Each hair is hollow, which traps air inside, making it very lightweight and exceptionally warm. If you look inside the structures around the village, you will notice that each bed is made with fresh spruce boughs and topped with caribou hide. Now, that spruce bough and caribou hide mattress was very important because it was lightweight, warm, and portable. Now, as the lady said, the Athabascans were nomadic. They moved 8 or 9 times a year. That's why these structures here are much more temporary than the cabins in the village. This first dome-like structure is called a caribou skin hut. They're made with pieces of steamed and bent spruce poles tied together for the frame, and the outside is a layer of caribou hide. When it was time to move on, all those hides were packed up because they're much too valuable to be left behind. So we like to call this the world's first mobile home. On the far end is an even more temporary structure called a double lean-to. Hunters would often use these because they're easy to put up, and it's a simple spruce pole frame with spruce boughs, so it could just be left behind. Today we've talked quite a bit about the spruce tree, but an equally valuable resource was the birch. Unfortunately, there aren't any growing in this immediate area, but we do have an example here for you. The birch tree is a tall, skinny tree with white papery bark and has green leaves growing at the top. And it provided 2 very important resources. One is called punk, P-U-N-K. And this is a fungus that grows on the birch tree. It's one of the reasons they were able to survive such a harsh, cold winter, because they could take this punk and bore a hole into it using a sharp rock. Inside that hole, they placed embers from their campfire. Then, wrap the whole thing in moss and tuck it in a caribou carrying pouch like this. In that environment, the embers could smolder for maybe a day or more. So when they got to their new campsite, they could use this to quickly establish a new fire. Birch bark is also very valuable because not only is it pliable, it's waterproof. So it's great for making birch bark canoes like the one right behind me here. This canoe is made with steamed and burnt spruce wood for the ribbing. The outside is birch bark, of course, and it's all sewn together with split spruce roots. The black resin you see along the seams is a mixture of animal fat, tree sap, and caribou hair. And this canoe could probably hold 2 hunters and all of their camping gear, and hopefully a hind leg or 2 from a successful hunting trip. This is a birch bark basket. It's made in a similar fashion as the canoe. Women would use these to gather, store, or even cook food. Yes, I did say cook, but birch bark is highly flammable, so you can't place it directly over a campfire. The process for cooking is to put meat, roots, berries, and water in the basket. Then rotate hot rocks from the campfire in and out until several hours later, it would hopefully come to a slow boil. You can see why I am thankful for Taco Bell. Now this last piece is my favorite thing in the whole village. This is a birch bark baby basket. Aww. What Mama would do is place moss bottom. Can everyone hear me okay over the plane? Westerners. Mom would place moss or rabbit fur in the bottom, strap baby in with the cute moose hide straps, tie him on her back, and go about her day. But when baby did, what babies are known to do best, she would take little one out, dump the soil contents on the ground, and start all over again. So here we have the world's first eco-friendly, biodegradable, and disposable baby diaper. I want to thank everyone for joining Delanna and I in the village today. We're very proud of our heritage. It's been such a pleasure to share with you. I hope we've left you with the understanding that the Athabascans and Alaska Native peoples were very resourceful and overcame many harsh challenges. Today, as a next generation, we're left with the challenge of living in a Western society while still trying to preserve our culture. We do that by going to school and getting the best education we can, and then talking and learning from our elders as much as we can as well. And lucky for us, we get to share some of that information with you folks in the summertime. Before I let you go, I'll just give you some information and directions to things you might want to see in the village. Directly behind you in front of the boat is the post office. That's where Dave Monson will be to personalize your granite books. If you'd like, you can purchase the books inside as well. If you'd like to see the parka again, there's a shortcut right through these trees here. Hannah and Delanna will be modeling the parka for you during free time. If you'd like to see the dogs, head down this path past our second stop all the way to the other end of the village. The sled dogs are over there, and someone from Trailbreaker Kennel will be there to answer your mushing questions. Fish camp is right along the river, and that's where I'll be in a few minutes to answer your fishing questions. Don't be afraid to ask any of the guides or crew members anything. We're all more than happy to answer your questions, but remember to please respect all of the route boundaries, especially here at the reindeer. They're very sensitive. Please do not try to touch them. The most important thing I can tell you today, though, folks, is to listen for the boat whistle. When you hear the whistle, no matter where you are, please, it's time to turn around, make your way back on board. Otherwise, you're toughing it out yourself. Is closely related to the bobcat. They're known for their twisted black ears, their fluffy snowshoe-like paws that help them bound across the winter snow, and then their little stubby tails. Now this is a wolverine. Wolverine are very cunning and ferocious animals. Only the luckiest trappers come home with this prize. They were very valuable for that natural oil on their fur that I talked about earlier. Frost doesn't stick to it, so it's a natural protection against frostbite when it's so close to the face. In Athabascan, we call Wolverine Doyon, which means chief, because he's the chief of the forest. My auntie always tells me that if a bear and a wolverine cross on a trail, the bear is the first one to get out of the way. Now these pelts are all foxes. This is a red fox, a silver fox, and a cross fox. Now all three of these are common in the interior, and it's not unusual to find all of them in the same litter. But this last one on the end is my personal favorite. This is the Arctic fox, and it's a pretty winter coat, totally white. In the summertime, they'll camouflage to a nice brown color, but you won't find any of these near here. They only live above the Arctic Circle, which is a little more than 100 miles north of us. These little guys are also in their winter coats. These are ermine. They're white except for these little tips on their tails. In the summertime, their whole body is that dark brown color, and then we just call them weasels. But we have another playful nickname for the ermine. We folks like to hear it? Okay, well first I'm going to ask if anyone visiting us from Texas today. Oh, well, welcome folks to the big state of Alaska. Where we playfully call the ermine our Texas-sized polar bear. No hard feelings, Texas. Now this is a muskrat. They have very warm furs that are nice to make into parkas. Because they're so small, it takes 40 to 60 of them, but they're very common in the interior. This is a marten. They make nice warm winter hats that only takes 3, one for each ear, and then one going down the middle. Tails are usually left on for decoration. surprised you to know the Athabascans did not value the mate. The fur was too short and didn't anybody warm in the wintertime. So these pelts were often given to young girls to practice their skin sewing on. Sometimes we'll use them to trim clothing too. But after Western contact, we quickly changed our minds. Now we call it a money pelt.
Yeah.
Now this is the last fur I have to share with you. It's the beavers. They're very valuable for two reasons. They have a thick downy undercoat and then long guard hairs on the top. That makes them warm and water resistant. So they're nice to turn into hats, mittens, or mop socks. Beaver meat is also a delicacy, especially the tail, and it's often served to our elders. At any gathering, elders are always served first, out of respect. So by the time they get to me or Delana, I'll let them let the potatoes out. At our third and final stop, we're going to travel back in time, and Delana's going to teach you how we hunted the caribou, and we'll show you how we survived in this harsh environment. So if all heard down this path, we'll go to our last stop of the day. My mother's from Celtic, and my father's from Holy Cross, which are both located along the Yukon River. This fall, I'm going to be a senior at Lathrop High School, but afterwards, I plan to go to college to become an American Sign Language teacher. We are now in the Tanana Valley, the heart of the Athabascan Indian country. Today, we'll be sharing with you how the Athabascans skillfully survived in this environment for over 10,000 years, and how they adapted to village life and Western culture in the past century. We will have 3 short stops on the tour of the village, so please be sure to stay with us because there is one other group here and we want to give you a chance to see everything. At the end of the tour, you'll have 20 to 30 minutes to roam around on your own, ask questions, and take any pictures you may have missed. Thank you, Delana. So, around us here you can see examples of some of the largest game animals that are found in Alaska. On the far end is the hide of a bear. In the middle is the moose, and then closest to me is a caribou. But I'm sure everybody has noticed Bruce over here on our left. He's our life-size example of a full-grown bull moose, and he was taken north of us in the White Mountains. Now, he has a trophy-sized 73.5-inch rack. Unlike the caribou, moose are solitary animals, so in order to hunt them, the Athabascans had to be skilled at calling a moose. One way to do this was to take a shoulder blade from a previous kill and scrape it up and down a tree like Delana will demonstrate. As you can see, she is a very skilled hunter. Mole moose are very territorial, so this son would bring another one into the area to investigate who's on his turf. There is a second way to call a moose, and it's verbally. Hunters would use a birch bark megaphone in order to amplify the bull moose's mating call, which is a deep, guttural grunting sound that the hunters would imitate. And I've been practicing. So would you folks like a demonstration today? Okay. Here, moosey, moosey, moosey. Hopefully, one of these 2 calls would bring a moose into the area. Then, the hunter would take a bone-tipped spear and provoke the moose to charge. Then, plant it at a steep angle and quickly kneel below. When the moose would erupt to stomp on the hunter, he'd be forced to impale himself. And then all the land would have to do then is quickly and skillfully roll out from underneath the heavy-falling animal. The moose was a very important resource for the Athabascans. They were very useful for clothing, lashings, and shelters. And once the moose was brought into the village, the women would begin the tanning process. She'd start by taking sharpened shin bones from a moose and a caribou and shaving off all the flesh and hair. That would leave her with this stiff material called rawhide. Rawhide is very useful, especially when cut into thin strips called babiche. Babiche could be used as an all-purpose rope or lashing to tie together structures or web together snowshoes. But I'm sure you can tell that this material is much too stiff to be made into clothing. So the next step in the tanning process is to soak this in a solution of fermented moose brains and water. Now that milky fluid has acidic enzymes that break down the tough fibers in the rawhide. Then she'd use this tool to scrape the rawhide, and this is called clavas. It's It's much like an ulu, except it has a serrated edge. After several days or even weeks of soaking, wringing, and scraping, she'd finally be left with a soft piece of material like this. Now, to preserve all of that hard work, she'd stretch this hide and smoke it over a campfire. So you can always tell a true native tan hide by the rich, smoky smell and the varying brown to tan color. Now, these garments that I'm going to share with you today are both museum quality and were made using the traditional process that I just explained. Right here, I'm hanging up a chief's coat, and on my left, I've hung up a maiden's dress. Athabascans became in contact with Westerners in the late 1800s, and it was then that they began trading their furs for things like the glass seed beads you see here. After that, we quickly became known for intricate and beautiful beadwork designs, and these floral designs have symbolic meaning. On the maiden's dress, flowers would be sewn on to represent ones that were abundant in her home village. Here we have the bluebell and the Alaska state flower, the forget-me-not. The flowers on the chief's coat have a different meaning. They'd be sewn on to represent animal tracks, and a wife would sew these on her husband's coat in hopes of bringing him good luck on his trap line. The buttons on the chief's coat are made from cross-sections of the moose antler, and the buttons on the maiden's dress are made from cross-sections of the caribou antler, but they're both trimmed in beaver fur. Now, these garments here are ceremonial. They would not be worn every day. An everyday garment is called a kuspuk, or bestahalan, and those are the tops that Delanna and I are wearing. Traditionally, in the old days, they'd be made out of a thin moose or caribou hide, but lately we've just kind of stuck with cotton. Now, kuspuk loosely translates into summer parka or working parka. But speaking of parkas, I think you're really going to like this one. Delanna is modeling an Athabascan Yukon-style woman's winter parka, and it is all traditional, except for the big zipper going down the front. That's just there so we can take it on and off easily on hot summer days. Traditionally, they're sewn shut and pullover style. The main body is muskrat. It's trimmed in river otter and beaver fur, but the black and white designs are calfskins. Now she's going to show us the ruff. This is called a sunshine ruff. The outer part is timber wolf, and then closest to her pretty face is wolverine. Wolverine is always sewn closest to the face because it has a natural oil that helps protect against frostbite. Thank you, Delanna. If you didn't get the picture you wanted, don't worry. There will be girls modeling the parka for you during free time. That parka is about 27 years old and it prays for $18,000. But it's priceless to us, so we ask that when you come take pictures, you please don't try to touch. We'd like to preserve it for a long time. At our next stop, we're going to learn how these cabins were built, why there's grass on the roofs, and we'll show you some of the smaller pelts that went into making the parka. So we'll head right down this path for our second stop.
Then they have these nice mahogany-colored antlers. After they reproduce, antlers start dropping off. The males lose theirs first. The females have evolved to keep theirs for longer until the babies don't need to be defended anymore, and then female antlers come off and everybody grows new ones. And those babies are up and running within a day.
That's good.
They don't mess around because these animals are always on the move. People wanting to eat it in that state. So how about the salmon you put up through your family?
We do quite a few things differently for salmon for people. First, we'll start with a higher quality salmon, like the king or my family fishes for the sockeye. Then we clean and bone that really well. My grandfather likes to follow this same cutting process, and he'll call that eating fish. But you can also cut the salmon into thin, vertical pieces called fish strips. Either way, when it's made for people, you soak it in a brine. That's salt-based, and you can add things like brown sugar and honey. And then after it's air-dried for just a little bit, it rotates inside the smokehouse just for 5 days to a week, so it has a softer texture. And we don't like to smoke our salmon the same time as the dogs either, because we like to use different woods. For people, we use a soft, sweet wood like cotton or alder, but for dogs, we'll just use whatever we can find, really. Spruce wood, driftwood, they're not picky.
Nah, I've never seen one that cared that much. But I want to remember that sweet alder smoke and the brining for us, for later, of course. And maybe, Danae, while we make our way upstream a little bit more here. Could you tell us some about what we're going to see while we're in the village?
Absolutely. I'm excited to say that my fellow guides and I are glad to show you around the Chena Indian village and share with you some of our culture. This village is a replica of the original Chena village that Captain Jim visited when he was running freight. When that village became inaccessible by boat, it largely ceased to exist. But because preserving the native heritage was so important to Captain Jim, he and his family created the living museum that you see here. This village contains some 100-year-old cabins and many cultural artifacts that were carefully relocated here from the original village. All of the replicated buildings were made by hand by native craftspeople using traditional tools and methods. Like this cabin right up front here. This is our post office. Now, despite the name, you can't actually mail anything from there, but that's where our statue of granite is, and where Dave Monson will be in about half an hour to personalize your granite books.
All right, he'll have some copies in there if people didn't get them on the boat. As far as the tour you mentioned, Danae, are we going to stick close to you or just walk around on our own?
Both, actually. So when you folks get on shore, we're going to divide you into groups and take you around to 3 stops here in the village. One of which will be at this cabin right up front with the moose. Don't worry if this isn't your first stop. Everyone gets to see everything here in the village. You're going to get an up-close look at our reindeer again, and the guides and I are going to teach you how the Athabascans survived here for over 10,000 years, and how we trained.
I can't believe that. That's amazing. Because I remember when she was just itty-bitty and couldn't get over the logs.
That's right. That's right. Now she's leading the team.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and she's a brilliant and talented young lady. Congratulations, David, and thanks for sharing your backyard with us.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by. We'll see you down there soon.
All right. Alaskan Huskies, if you're curious about what type they are, they're actually a blend that's been developed over thousands of years. They're not any kind of a pure breed. You wouldn't see purebred Siberians or Malamutes out here for the same reason you're not going to see Clydesdale in Kentucky Derby. Right?
He's on top of his doghouse.
Same thing
Yeah,
here.
he's on top of his doghouse.
Yeah.
Look at they're all up there looking at
Keep an eye on.
Oh, they're beautiful. Yeah, yes.
Well, it might be the pumpkin picture. Oh, here we go. All right, making their way back in. All right, another good run, Dave Monson.
Well, thank you very much. And I'll tell you what, it was quite a race with old Stego there. We just nipped him at the finish line because they're reserves. But after every run, you want to make sure that every dog knows how much you appreciate their hard work. So, of course, we give them a pat on the head, say thank you, and then, of course, just like us, they love to play.
Yeah, gym class is done. Let's get into the pool.
That's right.
And enjoy some refreshing Chena River. David, I know our friends are going to have a lot of questions here, and I'm hoping that you or somebody from the kennel is going to be joining us for up close and personal time when it comes to giving out answers.
Absolutely. I'm going to come down there. It's one of the parts of each day that I enjoy an awful lot, is because I'm going to have the opportunity, if you'd like, to talk about dogs, answer questions. I'll be in I was going to say kennel. I'll be in the cabin right next to where the riverboat lands. It's called the post office. It's got a flag out front, but it also is a beautiful bronze statue of our great lead dog, Granite, that you can come over and take a picture by if you want. It's lots of fun. Also, Laura Alloway, right there, a veteran of the Iditarod, is going to come down, and she's going to bring some dogs with her, so you get to get up close and pet them. So between Laura and I, if you have questions, we'll have the answers.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you mentioned the statue of Granite, because it is a nice photo spot, but it's not the only way that he's been immortalized around here, because there's that beautiful book that you and Susan wrote.
Yes, I was actually raised out in western Alaska along the Yukon River. I've been piloting these aircraft since I was a teenager. My dad was a pilot and instructor. We also had sled dogs out on the Yukon for transportation. Tried my hand at the Iditarod race in 1980. Then in 91 I moved to Fairbanks here, became an aircraft mechanic. So now I work on these aircraft full time when I'm not flying them.
Well, obviously doing pretty well at it, because that's a big aircraft, but it works like it's brand new, which is kind of interesting because
Intercom is by far the preferred plane for bush pilots, even though there are newer models of small aircraft. What is it? What gives this particular plane its staying power?
Piper Supercut's design is 1930s and 40s technology, so it's very lightweight and versatile. So that makes it real good for getting in and out of the remote area lakes and rivers when you see it here equipped on floats. And also in the summer we'll go to wheels where we'll operate them on sandbars and ridge tops. Then in the winter months we'll put skis for ice and snow, so they're just a real good aircraft for year-round operation up here supplying the remote areas where there's no runways available.
And yet, I can't help but notice we don't see a lot of 30s and 40s technology on our roads. Our skies are full. How hard is it to do something like that in a year when Piper isn't today being made to do it in over 20 years now?
We're fortunate enough to still have manufacturers that are built parts of these older aircraft, and the shops like I have that maintain and restore them. So technology that really has proven itself over the years and is going strong today, and looks like it has a great future ahead of itself.
Well, I guess no need to change it if it works. Really glad to have had an opportunity to see that one fly. Have you got time to go for us again, or is something keeping you in town today? What's the plan?
Run downriver and head back to the base. You people enjoy your afternoon boat ride, and this will be two for almost there.
Okay, thanks again, Steve. D3 clear. All right, got time for one more. Give you an idea how good a mechanic he is. He found that plane by the side of the road about 20 years ago with brush and weeds growing up through it. Took the whole thing apart, completely restored it. Now he's got well over 2,000 hours on it, taking him all over the state. It's got a skinny frame with metal tubes, a fabric coating about like your bed sheets. So here we go, the flying bed sheets off to the left once more, and on your monitor, let's say and wintertime won't slow him down a bit. Once things, well, actually, you know, it's in about October.
My life, I came up here when I was a little boy. I was born in Kentucky. Came up with my folks. I remember the day clearly when the wheels touched down. It was July 2nd, 1979. Quite a journey getting up here. But came up with my folks, in particular with my father, to help pursue his dream of being a big game hunting, fishing, safari guide. I kind of grew up in the woods doing that sort of thing with him. Our hometown's in Wasilla, about an hour north of Anchorage. Went to college at the University of Alaska here at Fairbanks. Studied for my degrees there. We just sort of started off here as a fun summer job for me. 27 years later, it's still a fun summer job for me. Love what I do, love Alaska, everything about it. And I hope to have to answer your questions for you as we wrap things up here. We're going to finish things off with a presentation about this big metal tube in front of you. As you can imagine, this is the one and only Trans-Alaska Pipeline. It is 800 miles long. It spans from the northern coast of Alaska and the shores of Prudhoe Bay, the Beaufort Sea, and the Arctic Ocean. It goes 800 miles south and terminates at the Valdez Marine Terminal in Valdez, Alaska, on the shores of Prince William Sound in the Gulf of Alaska. It was built from 1973 to 1977 and has a diameter of 48 inches. What you see here is not the actual pipeline. It's inside there. It's 4 feet in diameter. The average thickness of that steel is about 5/8 of an inch. They've got insulation wrapped around the outside of that pipeline. What you see here is the outermost steel sheeting and casing to protect it all from the weather. Now, about half of this pipeline was constructed above ground. About half of it was placed below. They preferred to bury it. It tended to be safer that way. As an example of it being below ground, if you turn your attention north to that big hill over there in the distance, and note that swath of ground that's been clear cut away, that's the right-of-way easement of the pipeline. It's buried right up that hillside over there. It also serves as a fire break because we get a lot of wildfires here in the interior in the summer. Now, if you haven't noticed already, it also goes right back underground over here at the end of that fencing. Now, in instances when the pipeline is above ground, like what you see here in front of you, is an indication that it's on unstable ground, that it's on what's called permafrost. And you should have heard quite a bit more about permafrost by now. But understand that permafrost is pervasive in Alaska, particularly in the interior and the further north that you go. Permafrost means that it is ground that is frozen solid and it stays that way year-round. It never thaws out when left undisturbed. It froze eons ago during our ice age, and even today, if you were to dig down here 8, 10, 12, 15 feet or so, that material is frozen solid. It stays that way year-round, never thaws out when left undisturbed. You may have noticed the condition of our roads by now. Well, in 1970, there was an organization established that you may have heard of called OSHA. In 1971, along came the EPA. In 1977, you may not have heard of this one, they set up the MSHA, the Mining Safety Health Administration. They don't permit dredges in Alaska anymore, folks. They're just too dangerous and destructive. Now, on that point, a lot of people started asking me, well, what about that fellow on TV that fired up that dredge here? I really don't watch television. I don't care to anymore, but I was compelled to look that fellow up on the Gold Rush show. And he may have bought that dredge in Alaska, but he hauled it over and set it up and was operating it out of the Klondike, Canada, Yukon Territory. Now, there's lots of placer mines in Alaska, but instead of dredging machines, we're using front-end loaders and excavators and sluice boxes. We keep all of our water contained in settling ponds, so there's no discharge into our fish-bearing streams. The modern-day placer miner in Alaska, they've got their act together here, is fully appreciative and respectful of the environment and Mother Nature. Cuts.
May 24th, 2017, Juneau, Alaska.
motor what grabs the gold. It breaks the current, drops the gold under it and into the matting. Every 2 weeks, though, this dredge was completely shut down, and that was so they could pull a cleanup. Crew would come on board and go up to deck 2 where the sluices are located. They completely
success or failure in the night. You really can't water it down. Because there's meat for food here, hides for clothing and shelter, gut, bone, sinew, antler, and absolutely none of it would go to waste. Down to it quickly with those big feet. In fact, the word caribou is a Mi'kmaq word that means deer who paws the ground. And both male and female grow antlers.
Then I cut off the head and sliced along the backbone, making 2 fillets, leaving them attached at the tail. Because there is some meat left on the backbone here, I'd use this to make a stew for the dogs at camp. Same for any usable innards, like these eggs here. This was a female salmon, so she was carrying eggs. But if this were a higher quality fish, like the sockeye, I would give these to my grandmother, and she'd boil them with some salt. That was one of my favorite snacks as a kid. If this were the head of a king or a sockeye, I'd give it to my grandpa, and he'd make fish head soup, which is a delicacy we serve to our elders.
Yummy. How is fish head soup?
Well, I don't know, JR. I'm not old enough.
Oh. Well, all right. Ask her in 60 years. Now, why all of the uluing into the fillet? What do these slices help?
Well, right now I'm scoring the salmon. This is a process where I make diagonal cuts into the flesh all the way down to the skin. What this does is create a larger surface area and opens up the flesh, allowing the smoke to further dehydrate the salmon.
You'll see when she holds it up. Little shake, gravity helps out. All those vents pop open, and now that's set to lose almost all of its water weight.